Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster and I thought I'd do another instalment of my prepping series. Now today I want to focus on sort of one of the real basics, heat and light. Now again, as I've said before, I'm focusing very much on short-term necessity, you know, kind of a few days of either power going down or whatever it may be. But a lot of what I'm going to sort of go through today can be sort of tailored to go for a longer period. All depends on what's available to you, whether you have a location where you can store a lot of things or what have you. But basically I've just got a small example of some of the stuff I've got next to me here, which for me, most of this comes into either my bushcraft or my carving, so it's kind of almost a byproduct, if you like, of kind of what I do anyway. So I've not had to put a lot of effort into this. Obviously, if you're not into this kind of thing, then obviously you can go out and purchase stuff like this yourself if that's what you want to do. But really, you know, if I've got a power outage or for, you know, or the gas goes out or something like that, and I either can't cook or I've got no electricity, I need to be able to see, I need to be able to stay warm. So first and foremost, real basic, most people will probably have one in their house. I've got a torch. Now as a bushcrafter, you know, I've got probably a couple of dozen of different torches, taking different types of batteries. This is a rechargeable style battery in here. I've got plenty of others that have got sort of standard double or AAA batteries, all the way up to sort of C and D cells and things like that. But I've got plenty of them sort of dotted around my house. Cupboards, drawers, I've got one on my bedside table, you know, that just allows me to sort of be in very easily, you know, if the power was to go pop, you know, I think in pretty much every room in my house I've got a torch available just in case I need one. Moving on from that, one of the things that I think is absolutely indispensable for bushcraft, for prepping, whatever you want to, you know, go with, and that's a lighter. Standard butane lighter. You can pick these up for pennies from most shops, and it's just a guaranteed way of making fire. Now there are people I bushcraft with who not so much turn their nose up at these, but they kind of go, no, do you know what, I don't want to carry a lighter, I want to rely on my own skills. Absolutely fine, it's personal preference. I prefer to always carry one with me, more as a fail-safe, so that if I'm out bushcrafting, let's say, and I for some reason just cannot get a fire lit with more sort of traditional or sort of bushcraft related methods, I've always got a backup. So this will just allow me to light a fire or a candle or whatever I need to light quickly, easily, without any fuss. It's all well and good going out practicing bushcraft and spending a couple of hours in wet conditions to get a decent fire going, but if you really need a fire and you need one quickly, this is always a good option. Flip side of this, obviously you can carry boxes of matches and things like that as well, which I also do, but I do prefer the easiness and the almost sort of guarantee of carrying a lighter. The next step below that, and everyone will be familiar with these, it's a ferro rod. And again, you know, I use these all the time. I consider myself to be fairly well practiced with a ferro rod, so I know I can get a fire from anything from a cotton wall ball all the way down to like a feather stick, you know, it's natural tinders, that kind of thing. But again, really useful, and again, because I'm a bushcrafter, I have one of these lying around. You know, I've got, oh God, I must have at least a dozen different styles and types of ferro rods. I've got them in my bushcraft pack, I've got them in my belt kit, I've got one attached to my knife sheath. You know, I've got loads of them kicking around the place. I always keep one in my workshop here with me as well. No particular reason, just the fact that I've got plenty of them, and I just sort of have them dotted around, more because I just put them down places, and you know, I know there's always one somewhere. So that kind of covers the heat side in terms of fire. Also, the flip side of things like that is obviously you've got camping stoves, which I've also got several of. One of them sits in my workshop primarily for any kind of finishing needs that I need. I think you've probably seen this in another one of my videos where I do a sort of beeswax finish where I need to melt it. And again, with this, you know, I can turn it on, take my lighter, and there you go, I have fire. Alternatively, if I don't have a lighter to hand, I've got my ferro rod. So again, if I just turn the gas back on a second. Again, I've got fire. So that will provide, in a real pinch, that will provide me some heat, and more importantly, it will allow me to cook. And again, last thing I suppose in terms of the fire is this. Now it's just a sort of a string bag that I've got several of these in my workshop, and whenever I'm doing any kind of carving, you're always going to get offcuts, you're always going to get pieces of waste wood. As I said in my last video, I've got a little chimney in my garden, and that's primarily the reason I keep hold of all these offcuts. I stick them in a bag like that, I hang them up from the rafters in my workshop, allow them to dry out slowly and naturally, and I've got a really relatively good source of firewood. Now these are all the really small offcuts, none of them are bigger than about sort of 4 inches long. I've got other bags that have got kind of bigger pieces in them. As a wood carver, I don't have huge pieces of wood apart from stuff that's waiting to be carved, mainly because anything sort of much bigger than that, I can generally make something from it. I can either make a spoon or whatever. But again, I keep these deliberately so that I've got something to burn. It's not so much a prepping item, if you like, because I tend to use it, if I'm out in the garden in the sort of the autumn time especially, I'll have the chimney going. It's a source of heat. It's nice to sort of people to gather around it, that kind of thing. But again, I do have this sitting around ready if I ever need it, if I had to cook on that chimney or something like that. So that covers heat, fire and something to cook with, and I will do a separate video on kind of food and cooking. And then the light, so obviously we've got a torch, I've got dozens of the things kicking around, and that takes us over to these, which is lanterns. Now these are candle lanterns. I'll give you a bit of a close-up. So this is one that I tend to favour. It takes a little small tea light candle. You get about 2 to 3 hours worth of light out of it, and they're pretty good. They don't give out the best light in the world, certainly not as much as a torch, but if you've had a power outage for some reason, let's say there's been some flooding or something, and you've got no power for several days, or a couple of, maybe not several, but a couple of days, certainly a day or more, having something that you can light like a candle and just sort of sit there on the side is a massive benefit. If you're sitting in your house at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night and the sun's gone down, you are going to be in darkness if you have no power. If you've got no power, it means your street has no power, so you'll be no street lights. There'll probably be very few cars on the road because obviously there's no power for anybody. Okay, you've got headlights on your car maybe, but you're not going to want to travel in what is essentially pitch darkness. The other one, which is one that I usually take if I'm going sort of bushcrafting and camping, just a smaller, more compact version. I really rate these. They're great little lanterns. Again, you've got your little tea light candle in there. You've got some glass around the side which sort of acts as a little bit of a lens to reflect the light a bit. And you can put one of these on the side. They've both got caps on the top, so that the heat is kind of caught up on here, and you certainly wouldn't want to touch one. But I've actually used these inside fairly small tents. It's not something I'd necessarily recommend, but that said, it's something I do, so it's a case of do as I say, not as I do. But in a small tent, one of these will provide ample amounts of light for you to do whatever you need to do. You need to be a little bit careful, obviously, knocking into it and that kind of thing. But having this on its little hook, hung on a tent like that, I've never ever had the tent material or the string that it's hanging on ever sort of burn through or get too hot that I've got a concern that it'll do that. And it also, and especially in a small tent like a bivvy tent, it will actually provide some heat in there as well. Now I wouldn't recommend having it lit after you fall asleep. It's just dangerous. But for an hour or two before you decide to go to sleep, it can produce a little bit of warmth in that tent for you as well, which is quite nice. So that basically covers light and light and heat. So this will allow me to cook, it'll allow me to keep myself warm, it'll allow me to see what I'm doing, and that's really what I'm focusing on. And this is only for a short term, but again, if you're planning on or you're in an area where you think you may have a long-term power outage, several days or more, or you're planning on bugging out somewhere, there's no reason you can't stock up on this kind of stuff. But as far as the camping gas goes, I've normally got several different shapes and sizes of gas canister lying around because I tailor them to what I'm doing. If I'm going out for sort of a single night, I'll take a really small sort of 100 milliliter or milliliter or whatever they are canister with me. If I'm going out for 3 or 4 nights, I'll probably take something this kind of size. But I've always got several kicking around, so if I did have 2 or 3 days where I had to rely solely on a camping stove for cooking, I could do that. But that's just my take on it, guys. So that's heat and light from my perspective in the UK, where maybe we're going to get a power outage for a day or so. Maybe I'll need to cook because the gas has gone, and you know that's really the extent of my prepping on that. You know, if I was in an area, as I say, that it was more prevalent and something that happened either regularly or for longer periods, I'd probably stick with this method, but I would just stock up more on either the gas canisters, candles. I'd make sure I've got a bigger store of wood. You know, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, I don't live in an area, you know, where I'm out in the countryside where I've got a wood burning stove that I use to cook on. As much as I would love that, so basically this is it for me. But I hope it was useful, guys. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Comments below. Let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like to see, or any questions or comments you've got about prepping in general that I can incorporate in other videos. And I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks, guys.